Hi, John and Mary. It is so nice to see you today. I'm so glad we're able to set up this meeting and catch up. And also, John, congratulations on selling your business. That must be very exciting to be retired. Before we begin, as a fiduciary, I do just want to disclose that you were referred to me by that insurance agent, and they have compensated me $4,333 for the referral and the partnership for your insurance needs. So, in this meeting today, I'm going to be going through the financial plan that I put together for you all. I wanted to touch on your current financial picture, and then I was going to dive into your risk management, your investments, your retirement planning, tax planning, and lastly, I was going to review your entire estate picture. So I do have several recommendations throughout, and I'm hoping we can work together on a game plan and make sure that we can achieve your financial goals. Do either of you have any questions or anything else that you would like to add to our agenda today? No? Okay. Well, I do want to review from our last meeting the goals that we had come up with and put into place. So first, I know both of you were hoping that we could reduce any estate or gift tax liability. And you're also concerned and want to ensure that we have all of your estate planning documents in order. You're also hoping to review insurance contracts and discuss potentially purchasing a long-term care policy. You also want to reduce your personal income tax. And the last goal that we put together, which was based off of your risk tolerance and the questionnaire that we completed together. You want a recommendation for a diversified portfolio that meets your needs and expectations. So those are the four goals that we had put together. Has anything else come up that you're hoping to add to that list? No? Okay. And I did actually want to mention a couple of other things. I know you both had mentioned our previous conversations that weren't quite solidified goals, but we're going to address today. We talked about that installment agreement and how that's going to be taxed. So I wanted to address that today. I know you're also hoping to buy a new car and you're looking to set aside about $40,000 for that. You're also hoping to evaluate some tax-free growth options for the 401k and 403b. So that way you can maximize some of your assets that will be left over to your children and grandchildren. So those are all the things I was hoping we could look at as we review your entire financial picture. I know last time we met, we completed a risk tolerance questionnaire. Both of you ranked pretty high. You're both willing to accept high levels of risk. So I'm going to be incorporating that throughout into this plan. But you both had said you do not want any investments with tobacco stocks. So I have kept that in mind as well. So first of all, your entire financial picture. And I'll also add, if you have any questions throughout this meeting, please just stop me. We're going to be going through a lot of information. So I'm more than happy to break anything down for you if you need more clarity. So first of all, both of you have done a phenomenal job across your lifetimes of setting yourselves up for financial success. You have a net worth of just under $14 million, and that is amazing and something you both should absolutely be proud of. And this past year, you've had a net disposable income of just over $1 million. So that has really set you both up for success. One ratio that I like to run for my clients, it's called a current ratio. And it is something that we can determine if your current liabilities will be able to pay off your current debts. And we like to see the ratio come in at over 1. And you actually come in at just around 29, which is wonderful and extremely successful. So you have more than enough short-term assets to pay for your short-term liabilities. One thing I did notice is for an emergency fund, typically we aim to have around 3 to 6 months of savings built up for an emergency fund. So for both of you, looking at your cash flow statement, that would be somewhere between maybe $150,000 to almost $300,000 for you to have anywhere between 3 to 6 months in savings. You both actually have $746,000 in cash or some CDs as well. So I actually think we have a little bit of wiggle room here to bring down that emergency savings, to closer to that 150 to 300 range. And then we can actually deploy some of that extra cash into some of your other goals. So things like that $40,000 car or your grandchildren's 529 accounts. So I'm thinking one option recommendation I have is as those CDs come due, we can look at moving some of those assets to a 529 account for your grandchildren. And one option that we can do to really maximize the gifting strategy for the 529 and limit the gift tax is you can do a 5-year upfront gift. And that would look like $190,000 that you can actually gift as a couple to each grandchild. So total, you would be able to put aside $570,000 for all 3 grandchildren. Once we do that, you would file Form 709 with your taxes. We would do that next year, so the year after we implement that. And that would allow you to do this 5-year upfront gifting strategy, and it would avoid the gift tax. So now I want to hop in to our first section in a bit more detail, and that is going to be risk management. So things like insurance. Is there any spots that you guys might be underinsured? So the first thing I took a look at was your home and vacation insurance policies. Typically, we recommend that 80% of a home's value be insured. So your current home, your primary home and residence, is worth around $775,000. Your current insurance policy only insures you for about $400,000. So if we're aiming for that 80% insurance of your value, that leaves us with about a $220,000 shortfall. So ideally, we would like to see that get bumped up. So your total insurance for your primary home should be around $620,000. Do either of you have any questions on that? Perfect. And I do want to add, you have an HO3 policy, and this is both for your home and vacation home. Just keep in mind that doesn't cover things like flood insurance. So you could add something like a peril policy if this is of concern. And I will add your vacation home. It looks like the insurance was sufficient for your vacation home. So you have your insurance will cover you up to $460,000. And your vacation home is valued at $550,000. So your insurance for that more than covers that 80% value that we like to meet. Now, hopping into health insurance, you both are on Medicare, which is great, and you're both signed up for parts A, B, and D. Do either of you have a Medigap or Medicare Advantage policy that you did not list last time we met? No? Do either of you have a work retirement plan that's giving you additional coverage? No. Okay. So what I really recommend moving forward is that we take a look at a Medigap or Medicare Advantage policy. So while Medicare, original Medicare under parts A, B, and D do cover you for some hospital stays, they cover you for some outpatient services, and your Part D program gives you that drug coverage, there are lots of shortfalls that do come with parts A and Part B. So I really want to ensure that if you do have a lengthy hospital stay, or you do need a more expensive surgery, or you have a more expensive illness that falls under Part B, that we have those covered. I would personally recommend for your income level that for peace of mind, you look at a Medigap policy. And specifically, there is a Medigap policy called Plan G. That is the most comprehensive health insurance policy that there is for Medicare. It covers so much of the health concerns you might have if you step into a hospital or you go to the doctor's office or you have a serious illness. I think it would really give you peace of mind to have that most comprehensive policy. The caveat with Medigap is that they do have a health history questionnaire that you have to fill out. They're going to look at 5 to 6 years of your health history, and they can reject you if you've had any serious illnesses or something that might be of concern. If that is the case for either one of you, we can certainly look into a Medicare Advantage plan. Medicare Advantage plans do not have health history questionnaires. They are much less expensive than Medigap plans, but they do tend to be less comprehensive. So we would want to make sure we evaluate that and get you something that will cover you for any of the illnesses or sicknesses that you might have, and you do not end up with an unexpected health insurance bill in the mail. We all know we do not like those. So now for life insurance and long-term care, I know you're both concerned about potential long-term care costs, and I think it is very smart that you are thinking about that ahead of time. So I kind of wanted to combine the life insurance and long-term care because I think you might be able to, there's some options where you could fund your long-term care with your life insurance. So both of you have great life insurance policies. There's nothing more that would need to be added there. Something to keep in mind is typically with life insurance, the reason you have it is to leave something behind for your dependents. Well, for both of you, your children are all grown up, and you're both very fortunate to have both of your children be financially self-sufficient, and they are able to cover their own costs. So you might not necessarily need your life insurance policies as much anymore. They're not quite as critical. So there's several different options that we can do with these policies. The first option is you could consider gifting it to your children. This would help keep that death benefit in the family. So what is one option? The other two options are ways that we could fund long-term care insurance with your life insurance. So you can actually surrender your policy, or we can see if you qualify for selling your life insurance policy to a third party. Selling it tends to give you a larger payout, but there are some stipulations that you would have to go through before a third party would purchase it from you. So we can also surrender it. The benefit of this is you're going to get cash now, and then you can actually put that towards long-term care. I think before we even decide what to do, we need to figure out what your aging is going to look like. So are you going to be aging in place and you want to both stay at your own home? What's that going to look like? You need to consider if you have a 2-story home, are you going to be wanting to go up and down the stairs as you age? You also want to consider things like bathtubs. As we get older, it can be really hard to step over that bathtub. So something to consider is lowering that so it's just a shower with the flat floor. So there's a lot of things to think about. I can certainly give you some lists of ideas that you might want to change in your own home if you want to age in place. Other options are aging in retirement communities and different long-term care facilities. So these options can be more expensive, but they are very important to research ahead of time and have an idea of places that you might want to go to before you would ever need it. And maybe you will never even need the option, but it'll give you peace of mind knowing where you might want to go in case you do need those services. So there are a couple of resources I have come across that I think would be a great place to start. The first is called A Place for Mom. And although it is a place for mom, of course, either of you can use this. It really just helps you research different retirement or aging facilities in your area and what that cost might be. So you can set up your own profile, you can specify what you're looking for, and it'll help narrow down those options for you. So you can have a list to start researching and potentially visiting these places as well. The second resource is called the Genworth Cost of Care Survey. And I'll add, both of these websites are free. They're available to you. You can go online. They're just free resources to start to figure out what you might be looking for. So the Genworth Cost of Care will give you an idea of what different services might cost. So maybe if you want to age in place and stay at home, you might end up needing at-home care. And you can see for your home in New Jersey how much that might cost you versus if you stay in a nursing facility or something that is more comprehensive care that you'd be leaving your home for. So we can start to figure out what those costs are going to be. And then I think we should look backwards and figure out what assets we can start to allocate towards that goal. I also want to add, and you're going to hear me say this throughout our meeting today, but it is really important to keep in touch with your family members and your children, especially as you are making these decisions. I know it can be really stressful to have those conversations, and we always want to avoid those hard conversations, but it is really important to get ahead of it. I have seen families get torn apart when these conversations do not happen right away. So I want to make sure that they happen before you ever need these services, and they will be part of that conversation and feel that they are part of the plan. So after insurance and long-term care, I did want to touch on your auto insurance policies as well. Overall, those look great. It does look like your property damage coverage is kind of low. It's at $15,000. Just something you could consider looking into and increasing as well if you want a little bit more coverage there. We can also consider adding something like an umbrella policy. This will help cover all of your assets, which I think would be a great option for you guys in case one of your current insurance policies doesn't cover as much cost as the accident that might end up happening. So I would recommend an umbrella policy of at least $2 million. It could help cover things like your boat, which you don't currently have insurance for. It can also actually help protect your investment accounts from things like lawsuits. So especially since you're more in that high net worth bracket, lawsuits can happen, and it's great to be protected just in case they do occur. So that's that risk management section. Do you have any questions or need any clarification of what I went through? Perfect. Then I want to hop in to investment planning. So to give an overview picture of what you currently have, you have just over $6 million. This is in both your investments and that cash that I mentioned earlier. And looking at a breakdown of your asset mix, I don't have quite the exact breakdown since we just have those more generic buckets, and I can do a more comprehensive exam once we have this plan in place. But roughly estimating, you have about 75% of your investments in equities right now. And that's with me assuming about 40% of that balanced fund that you have is in fixed income and about 60% in equities. You have 12% in cash. As I already discussed, I think you have a little bit too much right now in cash. We really just need that emergency savings and a little bit extra to give you that safeguard. And then we want to get some more of that cash deployed into investments. And that leaves us with about 13% in fixed income. It also looks like the majority of your investments are in large caps. And $940,000 of this was just in 4 stocks. And it looks like stock A has dropped significantly in value since it was purchased. So this is something I am considering diversifying a little bit, and I'll touch on that in a moment. Lastly, I did want to add, you do have an alternative investment. And what alternative investments are essentially anything outside of that traditional or typical stock or bond portfolio. So you actually have that inverted Jenny stamp, which is giving you some diversification because it doesn't move with the typical market fluctuations, right? So its value is not tied to the market. So this is a great addition to your portfolio that you have that gives you a little bit of an alternative. So some recommendations with your investment portfolio. I already touched on your emergency savings. So as I said, I think we can move some of that cash to a 529 plan. So for my recommendation, I think we should have around $150,000 in that emergency savings. This frees up just under $600,000 that is cash that you currently have that is above that emergency savings goal. That actually almost perfectly matches what you have in your CDs. So as those CDs come due, we can start to invest those in a 529 plan for your grandchildren, or we can look at a different option and a different goal that we can move those towards. So if we do this, this is going to reduce your cash position. And I would like to keep you both around a 75% equities, 25% fixed income range. And because of that, we're actually going to need to invest a little bit more into your fixed income sleeve. So we can keep your fixed income percentage at that 20 to 25%. So some ideas to do this, and I took a look at that stock portfolio. So those 4 stocks that you have, they have a cost basis of $960,000. They're only valued at $940,000. So one thing we can do is actually implement a tax loss harvesting strategy that will allow us to capture $20,000 in losses. We can actually use $3,000 of losses this year to help offset some of your income tax. And then we can move $17,000 in losses moving forward, and that gets moved forward indefinitely. You can use $3,000 every single year. So I think that gives us a great place. It'll help us save on some taxes, and we can re-implement the stock portfolio into some other assets that I think are going to serve you a little bit better and match your goals and risk tolerance a little bit more. So since this is all taxable income, right? This is not in a retirement account. So we call it non-qualified. So it is subject to taxes every single year, depending on income you might earn and if you buy or sell throughout the year. So I think to keep your fixed income allocation closer to that 20 to 25%, we should move around $300,000 of that allocation to a municipal bond. The benefit with municipal bonds is that they are federally tax-free. And since you're both in the highest income tax bracket, that will end up paying off much better than a taxable bond will. So I really recommend we look at a municipal bond. For the rest of the cash, I think we should look at something like an ETF. And we could look at several different ETFs, some in the large cap space. We can also look at some mid caps and small caps as well to increase your diversification in your portfolio and give you a little bit more flexibility there. So all of that will really help with tax efficiency. We also have your mutual fund portfolio. This is also non-qualified, so it's not in a retirement account and it is subject to taxes. I actually think this account is good as it is. It is fairly diversified. And all of the investments in it do have pretty large gains. So if we change anything in there, it would cause some capital gains for you both this year. So I think we should leave that alone. We can reevaluate that later on. If you are both in a lower income bracket, then we could start to make some changes. Now let's hop into your 401k and 403b accounts. These are both qualified retirement accounts. They do help with some tax efficiency. I know you're both hoping for a tax-free strategy with these accounts. One way we could implement this is by doing a Roth conversion for those assets. One stipulation for this, so we would move all of the assets from this 401k and 403b account into a Roth IRA. Roth IRAs are great because they are tax-free once the assets are in them and it's growing. And in fact, with a Roth, you can also avoid those RMDs. However, if we do move those assets from the 401k and 403b into a Roth, you would have to pay taxes because Roths can only be funded with after-tax dollars. So it is something we would want to look at and kind of figure out that tax analysis and which way is going to be better. I recommend we work with a CPA on this case so they can do a bit more due diligence and dive really deep into your tax situation. And we can figure out if doing a Roth conversion will, at the end of the day, save you more in taxes, or if we should implement a different strategy. But I did want to share that with both of you because I know you're hoping for a tax-free strategy moving forward. Just want to check in as I share all this information. Do you have any questions? Perfect. So let's hop into retirement planning. You are both now officially retired, so that is very exciting. So now rather than accumulating for retirement, we're going to start spending some of your assets as you continue to enter into retirement. So you're both in really good shape. You have, again, done a really great job of saving up your assets over time. Taking a look at your cash flow, it looks like you spent around $200,000 this past year. That is outside of the federal and state taxes that you paid. So it's more or less what you are spending throughout the year on living expenses. One thing we can consider now that you're both in retirement is looking at some qualified charitable distributions. You might hear these referred to as QCDs. And this is a way that you can actually roll over some of your retirement income to a charity. So if there are any charities that you want to support, this is a great way. It does help minimize your taxes if we do this. One stipulation for this is QCDs have to come out of an IRA. They cannot come out of a 401k or 403b. So again, this is part of our discussion. If we want to roll over your assets into an IRA or potentially a Roth IRA, then we could implement a QCD strategy. Until then, we would not be able to implement it. They also have an age qualification. So you have to be 70 and a half to do a QCD. So John would be able to start once we roll those assets into an IRA. Mary, you would have to wait a couple more years before we could implement this, but it is something I wanted to make sure was on your radar. We're going to keep monitoring your accounts periodically and make sure your asset allocation looks good. And as you get older, if you do want to change your risk tolerance at all, I will be checking in periodically to make sure your asset allocation matches what your true desires are and your goals, because your goals might change over time. Your children's goals might change over time, right? So what we leave behind might change. So I'll be constantly monitoring that and making sure we are still on goal for your retirement plans. Now I want to switch to taxes. I know everybody loves talking about taxes. So I already touched on several of these items, and we're working on that tax efficiency through your investment account. I mentioned that municipal bond and ETF portfolio. These strategies will really help reduce your tax liability. John, you had also asked about that down payment that you received on the installment loan. So you received $800,000 in a down payment, and you're wondering what that's going to look like for your tax situation. So I did take a look at it a little bit deeper. And of that $800,000, $180,000 of that is going to be a return of basis. So what that means is $180,000 will not be taxed to you, but the leftover $620,000 will be considered a long-term capital gain. I also took a look at your tax treatment of your first installment payment. So that first installment payment will be $47,519. Of that, $23,393 will be considered a long-term capital gain. So we will need to take that into consideration as we are looking at your taxes for this year. I also went ahead and looked at that inverted Jenny stamp, which again is awesome that you're able to get that from your dad. What a great gift and what a great asset to have. So I took a look a little bit at the tax situation for that. Keep in mind it is a collectible, so it is subject to a higher capital gains rate. So it is subject to a 28% capital gain. And since you both are in a higher tax bracket at this time, you may also be subject to NIIT tax, which is 3.8%. This would make the total tax, if you sold the inverted Jenny stamp, 31.8%. So I really do recommend, one option would be hold on to the inverted Jenny stamp. Once you pass away, because that stamp is in your name, it would actually go through your estate, and then the cost basis would get stepped up to the fair market value on your date of death. So that would really help save some of those capital gains that we've seen because it has grown in value so much over the last many years. So that is one thing I would recommend just to avoid some of those taxes. So now hopping in to your estate plan. And I think it's great. Both of you have already outlined your burial and funeral wishes and expenses. So that's going to really help save your family from trying to figure out what your needs and wishes were for your funeral, and really help save on those costs as well. I did take a look. Some of your assets are subject to probate. So some of your assets are not jointly owned and they do not have beneficiaries listed, which means they might be subject to probate fees and other expenses. It's also going to mean the courts are going to be figuring out what's going to happen with those assets. So I really want to make sure we have everything in order. That way it can follow your wants and wishes for how your assets get passed on, right? We don't want to leave that in the hands of the court. So a couple of recommendations that I have. It looks like neither of you have a power of attorney yet. I think that will be really critical. This is someone that can manage your affairs and your accounts if you become incapacitated. I also recommend, on top of that, you can have someone that's a healthcare proxy. This is someone that would be in the hospital with you if you were incapacitated. They could make those medical decisions on your behalf. These decisions should not be made lightly. And again, the family should be part of the entire conversation. So whoever you choose as your healthcare proxy, you need to tell them your entire list of wishes if X, Y, and Z happen. And the reason the entire family needs to be involved, not just the healthcare proxy, is because if you lay out your wishes that if something were to happen to you and you want the plug pulled, essentially, it's going to cause conflict, right? So if one of your children, you told them your wishes that you want to be left on life support or you want to be taken off, the other sibling, if they were not part of that conversation, they might not agree with what your decision is, or they might not believe that sibling. So it is really important that you clue everyone into that conversation. On top of this, you can also have a living will in place, and this is actually a medical directive that you can have, and it will outline exactly what those wishes are. You can actually file these with your local hospitals, which is a great option. But keep in mind, the local hospitals, every time you check in, don't always know that they have these living wills. So you have to make sure that your healthcare proxy has your living will and that they can make sure that the hospitals follow your living will. So this will take some of those decisions off of your healthcare proxy and some of that stress off of them. There's also something called a family life organizer. And this is a long document, so it can be a little bit intimidating and something I think you should go through over the next several months. It really helps get in line all of your affairs. It goes through everything from your accounts and your passwords for social media to who you work with, like someone like me. How would your children get a hold of me? My name, my number. You'd want to do this for all the financial professionals that you work with and any accounts that you have at banks and other financial institutions. You're also going to put down all of your information for things like your mortgage, or if you have any pets, who's the vet, who should be taking care of your animals if you are no longer around. So it goes into a lot of details and it can feel like a large task. But again, it's important to have all this information in place so your loved ones have the best outline and they can follow exactly what your wishes are if you are no longer around. I'll also add it's important to keep this document in a very secure location because it is going to have sensitive information about you. So you should have it locked away and only potentially your spouse and your executor of your estate should know where that is and where they can find it when the time comes. So that is another role I want to discuss, is putting in place an executor of your estate. This would be somebody that will carry out your wishes once you have passed. This is different from a power of attorney. A power of attorney has control over your affairs while you are still alive. Once you pass away, the control moves to the executor. So it's important to keep those roles separated as well. I also wanted to add, we could consider changing the title of your vacation home, automobiles, your boat, and the Jenny stamp, because right now they all have sole ownership. So we could consider moving those to tenancy by the entirety. This will help avoid some of those probate costs because it will smoothly and seamlessly transition to the surviving spouse. So that's something we might want to consider. So with all of this estate talk, really important for you all to do is meet with an estate planning attorney. They're going to really be able to outline all of these documents that you need and all of these positions that you need to get in place so we can make sure everything is in order and it is legally in order. So wrapping up, I went through a lot of information and I do have an action plan with just a couple of steps that I want to review with you. But I want to just check in. Is there anything I haven't covered so far that you both want to touch on? Perfect. So I will jump in to the action plan that we have. So number one item, I think this should be the first thing that you both work on collaboratively, and it is getting that estate plan together and in order. So both of you should reach out to an estate planning attorney. If you do not have one that you've already worked with, I do have several recommendations of ones that I have worked with in this area. I can give you a couple to call up. I recommend, talking to them on the phone, make sure it sounds like you work together well. But really work with them to get all of those estate planning documents in order. They can help you look at things like trusts, which can also help some of your assets move through your estate more seamlessly. And they can help you get that power of attorney in order, that healthcare proxy. So they're really going to be able to help you get all of that in order. I also think in the next several months, reviewing your home insurance plan. As I said, your primary residence is a little bit underinsured. So making sure we get that up to snuff before anything happens, right? We always want to make sure that's in place before the house is on fire. I also really encourage you both to look at a Medigap plan. As I mentioned, I really recommend Plan G. It's the most comprehensive exam that you're going to find. It'll really give you peace of mind. It is a bit more expensive than other options, but you both have sufficient income. So I really think it would give you some peace of mind so you don't end up with any unnecessary or unexpected medical bills. So you would need to work with an outside insurance company to do this, and they can help evaluate your options with you as well. I also have a big goal. I mentioned this throughout, but we need to set up a family meeting. You can meet with your family on your own, but I would really encourage that you meet with your family members, so your children, and we can all have an open conversation of what your plans are and what your wishes are moving forward as you age. I would say a good target for this would be in about 6 months. We could set up this meeting, and hopefully by that time, both of you will have figured out a bit more what that plan is going to look like and who you want to have what roles in your estate. And then we can share that with the family and understand what their wants and wishes are as well. Because if you're leaving behind this legacy, it's important to clue them in to your plans so you can make sure it also matches what they would like as well. Again, as the CDs come due over the next year, I think we should implement those into those 529 accounts and, potentially buying that new $40,000 car and just getting some of that cash implemented as well so we can stay on top of that. And lastly, diversifying that stock portfolio that you have and implementing a muni bond and some ETFs. It'll really help maximize those investment returns. We can minimize your taxes a little bit, and I think it'll match better with your risk tolerance. So, of all this information, I know you guys have a little bit of homework to do as well before we can implement this strategy. I'm more than happy to discuss if anything is of concern to you that I didn't cover, more than happy to go through that If anything I said doesn't sound like a recommendation you want to do, that is absolutely okay. We can figure out what parts of this plan we want to implement, and we can figure out the best timeline to do that together. So with that, I would love to set up another meeting in potentially 2 weeks. So hopefully that'll give you a little bit of time. Hopefully you can get something scheduled with an estate attorney within that time, and we can gather your assets and really figure out how to implement this plan moving forward. So I have really appreciated both of your times today. As always, I love meeting with you. You're both wonderful to work with, and you've made my life so much easier because you've both done a wonderful job saving your finances across your entire lives and really leaving a legacy behind for your own children. If you have any questions before we meet in 2 weeks, do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to address those or help you find any of those documents you might be looking for that we're going to need before our meeting in 2 weeks. So I will meet with you both then, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.